Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Our guest today, Ketan, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate your time. And first of all, just tell us where you're calling in from and what you do for a living with Gourmend Foods.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on? I'm calling in from New York City, downtown New York. Kind of cloudy out today, but hey, Gourmend
Likewise.
Foods. Yeah. Gourmend Foods. We make gut-friendly broths and seasonings for people who have trouble with digesting certain ingredients. So we make really clean label things that are really easy on your body.
It's amazing. I love that. And can you tell me a little bit more about your background leading up to creating this brand? I mean, what kind of problems did you see out there in the market that you're looking to solve in creating these products?
Yeah, for sure. So my background is actually more in marketing than food, but I do love to eat and I love to cook. So I've had stomach problems though since I was a teenager, and it took me until probably about 15 years ago to figure out it was actually food was the reason for my troubles. It took me ordering crazy tests at different hospitals here in the city after going to doctors who could never figure out what it was. Stumbled on some research about this food thing and found out that it was FODMAPs that were in different ingredients of food that were causing my challenges. And then I came to learn that everyone's got digestion challenges. Almost 1 billion people around the world have irritable bowel syndrome, which is such a staggering statistic. 2 out of 3 people say in America that they have a digestive challenge once a week, 2 out of 3. And recently found out the number 1 reason women go to the ER or urgent care is for stomach challenges, and number 4 for guys. So yeah, so I knew this was a big problem to be solved, and that's really what led me to go down the road of starting Gourmend Foods.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what kind of brought you to wanting to do this? Obviously, gut health is a big topic of conversation, I think, in like general sentiment today. I think people are kind of starting to learn that just like you did when you went to create this brand. And what kind of drove you to doing kind of the broth and spices side of things, maybe rather than like some other kind of food or maybe even like a drink or something?
Yeah, great question. So like I said, I like to cook. And so when I found out there were certain ingredients that were causing my challenges and all these other people's challenges, garlic and onion bulbs were the big 2. I felt like if you got to take out ingredients like that from your cooking, you're really kind of in trouble. And if you look at how people cook, I think the 2 base ingredients you need for pretty much any great meal are spices and broths. And from that, you have such a great canvas to do what you want to do. So that's why I started with those 2 categories. There's obviously lots of opportunity in the gut health space, but if you love to cook and you can't use garlic and onion, we needed a solution for that.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. And it's a great point. I mean, it kind of is something that can apply to almost everybody or anybody, at least that cooks, because it's so true. I mean, everything has garlic powder or like fresh garlic or like minced garlic or jarlic. I like to call it the minced garlic you could buy in the jar. Yeah. But no, it's a great point. It's a great point. And what kind of goes into, I suppose, doing things a little bit differently with like maybe more like a traditional chicken or beef broth rather than what you're doing, or a traditional garlic infused spice, or maybe even fresh garlic. Yeah. How are those things a little bit different than what you're doing?
Totally. Yeah, it was a big challenge to get started because most broths are made, they'll pull, say, chicken powder off the shelf and onion powder off the shelf and just put it all together or do that. Or if it's a bone broth, you might put bones in a big pot and then you're going to drop cheap onions in there, and it's like really easy. We had to find a team that was willing to bring in other ingredients. So we're using the tops of scallions, just the green parts, the tops of leeks, just the green parts, chives, more specialty kinds of things. And you can't buy the tops of leeks on the open market. So we have to cut, the white parts are not as gentle, and that's what hurts people's stomachs. The green parts are gentler. So we have to really go through that process and put only the parts we need in the tank. So it's very labor intensive. So we have to work with farms to buy the ingredients and then cut them the right way. So that's the broth side. And on the spice side, similarly, buy from farms, grow the right thing, cut it the right way, custom dehydrate it. These things don't exist before, like on the open market. So we really had to invent a supply chain on both sides to pull this off.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's such a novel process. Is that something that you had to kind of create on your own and you have like ownership over your manufacturing, or did you have to go and like find somebody to do this new process through a manufacturer to kind of do something new?
Yeah, it took about a year to find a manufacturing partner on both sides. Totally different broths versus the spices. Yeah, we couldn't really do it ourselves because industrial dehydration machines are a big deal and our broths are shelf stable, and that equipment equipment, just alone the equipment's probably $1 million. So you had to find partners to help pull this stuff off for sure.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And I know it can always be a challenge. Like a lot of the brands that, brand owners that I have come on the podcast are trying to do things either sustainably or, have the big 9 allergens, free and those types of things. It's, you would think it would be like not that hard to find people who are doing this. It's just such a big trend. It's such a big movement, but it can still, I know, be a big challenge. So I'm always interested in, people's timelines and looking to do those things because I think it's important for anybody that might be listening that might be looking to get 2 feet in a CPG brand for the first time. Like, that timeline is probably going to take a little bit longer than you think. You might think it might be like you might be even able to find, you Google like somebody who's doing these things, but to actually get your foot in the door and get a good relationship going there is obviously another part of that timeline and challenge. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing kind of a little insight on that. I guess at the beginning of the brand, we'll start there, but at the beginning of the brand, what was kind of your go-to-market strategy as far as like how you were looking to sell this thing, whether it was through wholesale, direct to consumer, Amazon? What was your general strategy at the beginning? And then kind of walk me up to how you exist today in 2024. Channels that kind of transpired there. Yeah.
So we rolled out in the middle of COVID. It was like June 2020. One SKU, one spice SKU. Let's mess around. I think there's an opportunity here, and I think people are sitting at home. So it was direct to consumer was going to be the thing, obviously, right? Nothing was open. My background is more in digital marketing and e-commerce, so that was kind of the easy place for me to go to start. And we had a partner, so our products are low-FODMAP certified. And there's a body that does that in Australia. And so they announced this product on their social that night. And we got 100 orders for that first product that one night, which has never happened again. It was crazy. Okay, clearly this is validated. People like this. And we started adding a couple more products after that. It's really all been online.
That's
and
awesome.
It started with just our site. Then we added Amazon on. And now those two are about 50-50. A little bit higher on Amazon actually right now. And then as of Q4 last year, we started getting our foot into some retailers to just test out that side of the house as well. So I think to grow, we really do think we've got to be multi-channel. People still find new things in grocery stores. So that's a nice canvas for us too. So trying to have it both ways.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of brands that started in COVID, obviously, like it almost has to be e-commerce. I mean, especially as a growing brand, you want to get your foot in the door in retail when half the grocery stores in the country are closed. Good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's really interesting. I think the general sentiment, before COVID or maybe even like today as we're coming out and things are kind of like, panning out to maybe like pre-COVID relationships with retailers and things. I feel like a lot of folks get into, wholesale and retail first to do like kind of a proof of concept there and then sell online when people get familiar with the product from buying it from the grocery store. But I think a lot of the businesses that popped up during COVID actually did the opposite, and it works just as well, seemingly, where if you can do a proof of concept selling online, I think it even gives you a better leg to stand on because it's hard to sell these kind of like low ticket products, like per unit at least, online with somebody, could easily just go to the grocery store and get their McCormick stuff, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I think that proof of concept is great. And it obviously, tell me if I'm right in this, is that, it seemingly gives you like a better leg to stand on and some leverage going into those conversations, working with distributors and retailers, rather than trying to do that from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. We have a lot of data, right? We know what our average order looks like. We know what repeats look like. And that's a good story to bring to retail. People want this stuff. And we have people asking us, hey, why can't I get this at X grocery store? So I think that's all been really, really helpful data. I mean, for us too, I think online was, I don't know, it's not easy, but easier for us to get started with online because we had this functional benefit. And so I knew there's Facebook groups and accreditation societies and dietitians. There's a lot of pockets out there of people looking for this stuff. And so we were solving a real problem. But now as we get into grocery store, we have a very clean label product. So it's great for a whole swath of people. And then you've got to really play up your differentiators in the right way because there's a lot of competition on the shelf. So that's what we're
Yeah, no, for sure. And to that point, especially when you think about selling online, how was your kind of like when you went to market at first, what does your kind of ideal customer look like at that time? And like, who are you really trying to message to? And has anything kind of surprised you as far as like any part of your customer base that seemed to be like really like good recurring customers as you go forward here to 2024?
Yeah. So most of our customers are women, skewing a bit older than me. And I think what I've learned is I think the younger crowd tends to just deal with their gut troubles. And as people, I don't know, and then at a certain point, I don't want to deal with that anymore. And then they start doing the research and they figure out what's going on and then they find a brand like ours. And so obviously we want to try to get to the younger crowd. People shouldn't be suffering. So we want to help as many people as we possibly can. So that customer, I mean, it's really all over the map. We've got, there's people like that come back and buy 50 times from us. So it's really ranged. And there's people that come a couple times. So it's really all over the map. But I will say, the most of our online customers, from what I can tell, are that segment. And it's harder to tell in the retail environment. environment exactly who the buyer is, except when we do demos, and that we get really, I think, clean eating. People just like the bone broth living, that sort of thing. They want to use it for post-workout. They want it instead of coffee. There's so many use cases here to really say what the number one is. But for sure, when we started, it was the people who have gut troubles. They can't have high FODMAP foods. They really need a solution. And now we're finding all these other segments too.
It's definitely true. I mean, I think people in kind of this millennial age, like older Gen Zs to millennials are, I think it just kind of can take a lot of people a lot of time to kind of like have those issues transpire into something that really bothers you enough where you're like, okay, like I really need to deal with this, you know? So I think it's a fair point. It probably is maybe part of the reason why your demographic skews a little bit older. And I guess I'm just curious too, when you think about consumer education, obviously is a big part of what you're doing with such a functional aspect to your food. And even though it is a big like topic of general conversation across the internet, I think people are just like kind of realizing, and there's a lot of good information out there. How do you kind of deal with that and, you know, bring some consumer education to the table as part of your value proposition as well?
Yeah, that's been big for us from the beginning. There's a lot of misinformation in this space out there. There's a lot of gut health products that are not good for you, in my strong opinion. So, you know, take this FODMAP thing, because it took me years to figure out what that was all about. So we worked with a dietitian to craft 8,000 word guide to FODMAPs. It's one of the best resources on the web for that, scientifically accurate, well sourced, all that stuff as kind of our gift to the community. And it's just there on our site. We have food lists that you can download and take to the store with you. So really trying to educate people along the way. A lot of our email marketing, a lot of companies, their email marketing is like, we got a sale, we got a product, you know, that kind of stuff. And a lot of our emails are, I'd say 80% of them are educational. And here's a great new scientific study we found. Here's something you might want to consider, that kind of stuff. I think it builds trust along the way, because I think you want to educate people. This is a huge topic. It's really complicated. So we try to do our best to share and educate along the way, for sure.
You know, that's great. And can you talk to me a little bit more about that FODMAP? That's not a term I've heard before, and I feel like a lot of people are probably in a similar situation. So can you kind of expand on that? What does that exactly mean? I mean, it clearly took you a long time to figure it out and get all the information needed. So yeah, just feel free to share anything you kind of found in that regard.
I'll try to boil it down. It's basically an acronym for a bunch of carbohydrates that ferment in your gut a little bit differently. So just think of them as sugars that are naturally occurring that are hard to digest for a lot of people. And so there's all different categories of them. So fructans, wheat, and garlic bulbs, onion bulbs are really high in that. There's honey is high in fructose. Apples are a problem. Ripe bananas are worse on your gut health than non-ripe bananas, that they just ferment differently. So basically there's this Monash University in Australia that lab tests our products. They've tested all sorts of fruits and vegetables and grains, and they've kind of figured out what the line is for the vast majority of people where it starts to cause you trouble. So for a lot of people out there, and I think one of the greatest studies too is a lot of people think they're sensitive to gluten. And unless you're celiac, which certainly there are people, it's a really tiny population. They did a whole study and proved that it was the fructans, one of the FODMAPs in the wheat, that was causing the stomach issues for people and not the gluten. So we tell our customers, you can have sourdough bread. The fermentation process in sourdough bread consumes a lot of this fructan content, makes it easier to digest, but it's wheat. It's still wheat and there's gluten. So I think this is one of the big educational areas.
No, it's fascinating. It really is. Yeah. And then I guess like, what are kind of some of the most common like misconceptions you hear, the things out there are like regarding gut health? Like, you know, if somebody were to come up to you and ask like, what can I do? Like the step I could take to like, you know, like enhance my gut health, or like, you know, what do you kind of find out there as far as like the biggest sources of misinformation?
There's so many different ones. I think this gluten thing's a really good example. Oh, maybe you're gluten sensitive, and maybe you're still going to feel not great because it could be the FODMAP. There's certain prebiotics that are high in FODMAP content. That could be an issue. There's a lot of sugar replacers that can be. And I also find a lot of gut-friendly products are using other things in there that do other things to your body, like raise your blood. Like there's maltodextrin, or there's replacement sugars, or there's high sodium, other things that are there to give you the quote flavor, and maybe they're not going to directly hurt your gut, but they're going to hurt your heart health. And like, to me, it's about the whole body health. And I think that's what I want to see more brands pay attention to.
It's fair enough. And, you know, it can be difficult. There's so many, you know, alternatives to certain things out there to like, you know, solve a symptom of one problem, but the underlying, you know, conditions that are going on are not really, I don't think being talked about or dealt with. I think there's a lot of like solution talk out there of like, do this for gut health, or do this for better this, or whatever it is. But I think just taking an approach like you are with just having like real, like just whole ingredients with natural ingredients that are, you know, more like less inflammatory and more healthy for your gut, rather than additives or like, you know, supplements that like try to support those things, I think is what people really at the end of the day are really looking for.
Yeah, so supplements and drugs, that's a huge, I think, I mean, I did that, right? When you go to certain doctors, like, try this drug, it's like, nothing works, right? So they just actually did a study a month or two ago, and they put people on a drug regimen versus a food regimen. The food performed better. So look at that. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then I guess there's one question I always love to ask everybody that comes on the podcast, which is, obviously you got your start in 2020, even only after 4 years. I'm sure you've learned a ton about this industry and about, what it takes to run a business and selling online. So if you go back to when you were kind of pre-revenue right before your launch and give yourself any piece of advice for you to go back and do it again, what do you think that piece of advice would be?
That's such a good question. I mean, give yourself grace. You just got to know going in, there's going to be some crazy challenge you never thought of in 2 hours from now. And that's never going to end, but you're helping people. It's fun. You're learning new things every day. So you just got to keep your head up high and push through to the next thing. I think entrepreneurship is all about what's the next problem to solve, which keeps it interesting. I mean, that's the thing. You don't do this to be bored.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're probably not surprised to hear it's a very common answer to that question. And, in all the podcasts I've done, I always ask that question. And I think the big sentiment is actually like exactly what you're saying. I mean, I try to bring some, like commonality to the table doing the podcast. And maybe for somebody listening who's looking to get into it, like a CPG brand for the first time, maybe they hear something that, they can look forward to maybe like not be like slapped in the face by some of the problems so much. But at the end of the day, even if you find a few of those things, it's the other 100 things that are always still going to be a surprise to you. So I think at the end of the day, that's really what it is. It's just the perseverance, like to learn from your mistakes and not necessarily dwell on them or actually even try to forget about them, because there's things that can be monumentally useful as you go forward as well. One of the best like quotes I ever got, I think, from somebody on the podcast was that mistakes are answers to future problems. And to be able to deliberate on those rather than like you got over and you're like, oh my God, I never want to deal with that again and forget about it. 3 years goes by, you're going to have a similar issue. You're going to forget because you kind of like blocked it out and you're going to be kind of going through that again. Whereas like if you can give yourself some grace, like you say, I think it also gives you an opportunity to kind of like really learn from things and have it stick so you can use that information for the next time something comes up. So I appreciate that perspective. I think it's really good advice. And I also just want to give you a quick opportunity to be able to just shout out your website, your social pages. Anybody might be interested maybe in potential business partnership or just wants to place an order and try the product. What's the best way to stay in touch with you all?
Yeah. You can hit me up at Ketan, Ketan at gourmendfoods.com. If you're an entrepreneur in the food space and if I can help at all, let me know. For sure, our website, Gourmend, MEND, foods.com, or we're on Amazon. And we've got on our site, you can get a 10% off code for your first order. So like I said, we're here to help. This sounds like you've got gut troubles. You want some advice? Let me know.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and just want to wish you the best of luck and continued success. I love how knowledgeable and passionate you are about what you're doing. It's really, really important. And definitely looking forward to keeping in touch as well.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. Super fun.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody.